morning, Realtors. How are you today? I have some great news for you today. And so I'm very pleased to be here this morning. I was very excited to find out that I was going to be the first speaker today. But before I tell you the good news that I have for you, today is an anniversary. This year is an anniversary for me. I am celebrating my 25th year as a Realtor, and I'm very happy to say. And I was going through some papers this week, and I came across a scholarship that I received in 1991 as I was attending college from the New Jersey Association of Realtors. And I wanted to take this opportunity to say, I'm proud to be a Realtor. I've had a tremendous network of people that I've met throughout the United States as a result of my association with the Realtors. The Miami Association of Realtors is a one-of-a-kind local association. But in looking at the scholarship that I received and thinking back on my career and the things that I've done and the opportunities that I've been given, it reminded me of that old Zen saying. It says, if you want to plan for next year, plant wheat. If you want to plan for the next generation, plant trees. And so I want to thank the Realtors for their support of me when I was a kid and for their support of me today as I stand up here today, hopefully as a tree to this organization. Thank you. I want to also encourage you as you move forward in your career to continue to invest and continue to plant trees and continue to foster our youth and our young Realtors and help support them, help them grow, help them succeed because they are our future. So with that in mind, let me tell you about what's happening in the present. I want to thank the team at One Sotheby's. I have had a cooperating agreement with One Sotheby's for the past 3 years. We will be publishing probably in another week or so the 2017 Trends Report, which will be distributed through One Sotheby's and my firm. Much of this data is a pre-look, a preview of what will be in that report. Some of it has not been fully vetted yet by One Sotheby's, but my firm does a lot of the data research, so hopefully it will remain accurate as we release the report in the next week or so. But I do want to thank the team at One Sotheby's for their assistance in the graphics and compilation. So, spent pretty much most of last year trying to figure out where we were, and I've been telling everybody that, you know, we're at this point of market inflection where last year the buyers realized that pricing was changing, but the sellers hadn't realized that yet. And I want to talk a little bit about kind of what I've seen over the course of the year and what I predict for 2017. I do believe that the recent interest rate changes that have been enacted towards the fourth quarter are going to be a positive. People say, well, how is interest rates going up going to be positive? That's going to affect affordability. And that may be true over a longer term period, but what this is going to do is it's going to make people come off the bench. They're going to realize, you know what, these interest rates are historically low, it's time to move, I have to do something, because the forecast for 2017 is that interest rates will continue to inch up as the economy moves forward and hopefully continues to get better. So, some initial observations is that 16 was rocky because there was no motivation to move. Buyers believed that pricing was going to go down, sellers believed that pricing was going to go up, and nobody really had to move because interest rates sort of stayed level. The other thing, of course, affecting South Florida, but Miami in particular, is the lack of South American buyers. And it is going to be very difficult for us, not only in the condo sector, but the international component of our business is substantial, and those economies continue to struggle. That being said, I wanted to look back at what I said last year. I gave a presentation in April, I believe, April of 2016. I made a number of predictions, and I always believe that as an analyst, it's important to have credibility, and the only way you can have credibility is to look back on what you said and say, well, were you right or were you wrong? So what I said was that 2016 was going to be slower. There were going to be fewer transactions. I did not expect to see huge pricing declines. I thought that at best, we were going to bring our pricing increases down into the low to mid single digits, but I didn't expect pricing retreats. I said the unique product and high barrier markets were going to outperform because there were going to be fewer buyers in the market. I said the global economy is not going to come back in 2016. It's going to take 3 to 5 years. It may take longer, but it's not a 1 to 2 year turnaround, and that was going to have negative implications for us in 16. And I said that the pricing sub 1 million was still hot, but that inventory expansion was going to soften this market. I sort of followed a theme in April that I thought worked pretty well, and so we're going to talk about it again, which is, okay, in the luxury market, how deep is it? Did 2016 hold, and will it hold in 2017? How important is the condo market in 17 for market psychology? Where are we today, and where are we going? So if you look, and I apologize because I recognize that for those of you in the back, this is absolutely impossible to see. In fact, I'm standing up here and it's nearly impossible for me to see. But what you see is that the two bars at the bottom basically demonstrate the level of inventory on a monthly basis and the overall yearly performance. And what you see is that in the $1 to $5 million transaction category, the number of transactions in Miami-Dade luxury market, this is in the luxury segment, the number of transactions went down. But what I will tell you later is that pricing held out pretty well. And we're going to talk about those numbers. In the $5 to $10 million transactions, the number of transactions again went down and inventory went up. And the $10 million transactions subsequently also went down. So what's interesting is across all spectrums of pricing over $1 million, we saw less transactions and more inventory building. But what was very interesting is I was talking to one of the major automotive dealers the other day, and he said to me, you know, what we're finding, he does high-end automotive retail, and he said what we're finding is the Ferraris are still selling very well. What's not selling well are the Lamborghinis. And what he meant by that was the guys that are buying $200,000 to $500,000 cars stopped. The guys that are buying $1.5 million cars are still out there. And I see the same parallel in the real estate business. I've talked to many of you, and many of you said, you know, the really high-end market has always been well-performing, and it continues to well-perform. Where we're really having a problem now is in that $1 to $3, $1 to $5 million price range. I think that we're going to see that continue into 2017, although again, I would suggest to you that these interest rate movements are going to be very positive to bring some people off the bench. What's interesting in Broward is that Broward held up really, really well. If you look at the Broward County market, Broward's $5 to $10 million transactions actually went up. They didn't build up a lot of inventory. The $1 to $5 million transactions ticked down a little bit, but not as much as they did in Miami-Dade and Broward. Broward held up really well. Now, when we look at the pricing, you're going to see why. Because in the waterfront categories in Miami-Dade County, the average pricing is $450, $460 a square foot. Average pricing. In some of our very top luxury markets, we have homes at $1,000, $1,200, $1,500 a foot. In some of the best markets in Broward County on the water, the pricing is $250, $300 a square foot. The really, really nice stuff is $500 a square foot. So Broward's pricing is just so much better that a lot of people in Miami-Dade are just stopping at that price point. But Broward actually held up really well over the course of the year, which was a big positive. I said last year that Broward would outperform. It actually did. Some of the reasons for that also relate to their buying cohort, right? Their segmentation of buyers tends to be more domestic buyers, more Northeast buyers. The stock market rocked it last year. It was cold as hell in January. So, you know, Broward was pushed forward by a lot of Northeast domestic buyers, Midwest domestic buyers, and also their competitive pricing. But what I am going to tell you is that Miami-Dade still did really well, particularly given the first quarter. I gave a talk probably in March or April up in Broward, and I told the Broward Realtors, I said, you guys are going to outperform Miami-Dade this year, you watch. And I said, but the problem is that everybody kind of had a terrible first quarter of 2016. The numbers in 2016, quarter over quarter, were down. And I said, it's going to be very difficult to pull out a good year because it's almost like winning an NBA championship when you're down 3 games. It's nearly impossible. And of course, the Cavaliers had just come back, and our hero LeBron James had delivered a come-from-behind win of the NBA championship. So it's not impossible. I said, if LeBron could do it, we can do it. Well, you know what? You did it. You did it. It was actually a pretty good year. And I'm going to show you why I say that. Now, I've said all year that, you know, the problem with the election is that people don't know what's going to happen. And that's always true. But I will tell you that most of the realtors that I speak to kept saying to me all year long, once the election is over, everything's going to open up. Once the election is over, everything's going to open up. I hope you're right. I really do. I hope you're right. There are some positive indications that that could happen. But I will tell you that certainly the election was a surprise. It changed a lot of people's outlook on what was going to happen in terms of estate planning and taxation. But I had a realtor from Palm Beach say a great thing to me, probably around June or July, as we were talking about this election dilemma. She says, I don't really care who wins. She says, because if Hillary Clinton wins, everybody's going to be afraid of taxes. And the only two places in the United States to go if you fear taxes is Florida and Texas. And I'm in Florida. And when I'm competing with Texas, I feel pretty good about our chances. She says, if Trump wins, everybody's going to be excited that we're going to get less business regulation, less taxation, and everybody's going to make more money and the economy is going to rocket forward. And she goes, that benefits because all the people from Wall Street are going to run down here and buy high-end homes. So she says, frankly, I don't care who wins the election. I just want it to be over. And so like Solomon says, this too shall pass. And now, as of, I guess, Friday, we'll have a new president, and President Trump will come in, and we'll see what policy pronouncements and what effects on the economy that has. Early indications are good, right? If you follow the economy, you see that people are actually, the market at least, is very excited about a potential Trump presidency. There's three things that are really positive for us here in Florida. Of the three major policy pronouncements that Trump has made, one is infrastructure spending, and Lord, do we need it. And having a governor that's in the state, that's tied to the federal money, that's tied to the White House, is a very good positive impact for Florida. So if infrastructure spending increases, and we need infrastructure, that could be very good. I will caution you that that's not a 2017 effort. Infrastructure planning takes years to get the money to the street. So you don't just wake up one day and say, we're going to spend money on infrastructure, and the money shows up that year, because you've got engineering, you've got planning, you've got a lot of things to do before a dollar comes to get invested in the economy. But that could be very good in 19, 20, 21 for us in Florida. The second policy pronouncement that Trump has said is we're going to do something about regulation and taxes. And so that could certainly be a very positive impact on the economy. And of course, the third is military spending. The good news about military spending is Florida's in a really good position. If you look at our aerospace industry, you look at what we have here in South Florida, military spending does affect you in the year that they talk about it, because the military is constantly planning. They're always ready to spend money. And if you get the money, they spend it and they build it. And so we're in a pretty good position to benefit from that. So the Clinton-Trump dilemma being over is positive. How that affects the economy in 17, of course, will affect our housing market. But I'll say this, I think that 2017 is going to be a very good year. It's going to reinvigorate us. It's going to renew our confidence, or it's going to tell us something about the real state of the economy, the real concerns. If this impetus and this momentum does not continue in 2017, it's because there's some underlying fundamental problem in our economy that someone's not seeing, what the economy calls a black swan event. Now, I don't think that's there, but I will say I do think 2017 as a result is going to be a good year. By most economic measures, the U.S. is in a very, very strong position. So let's talk about the Broward market measures, broader market measures. In Miami-Dade single-family waterfront, we lost about 9% on pricing, on average. The average pricing went down about 9%. You'll see that inventory is up. The amount of for-sale inventory, single-family waterfront is up substantially, and the number sold went down. So pricing went down, the number sold went down, the number of units sold went down, and inventory went up on the single-family waterfront product with a 9% average retreat. But in the single-family non-waterfront segment, although inventory went up and sales went down a bit, pricing nudged up 9%. So pricing went up in the non-waterfront category in Miami-Dade. In Broward, single-family waterfront, the waterfront pricing is up about 4.6% on average. Inventory actually has decreased a little bit, and the number of units sold is down, but slightly. So pricing went up, and inventory and sales stayed about level. Broward single-family. Broward single-family non-waterfront is up 7.75%. Transactions are up, listing inventory is up, and pricing is up in Broward. Rightfully so, 7.75%. Miami-Dade condo waterfront pricing is down 4.2%. Now, In this study, in this data set that we use here, this relates to a specific data set that we've selected as representative condominiums in every market. So this is not the entire market, but looking at the entire market, we're still looking at average pricing declines of less than 5%. The problem is, look at the inventory expansion. In 2015, we had about 6,200 units available for sale. At the end of 2016, we had almost 7,900 waterfront condo units available for sale. Our problem in the condo segment relates to the amount of inventory that's out for sale right now with a corresponding lack of additional buyers. But even at that, our pricing is down 4.2%, which is not bad. I heard somebody say to me the other day, condo pricing is down 30%. If somebody tells you that condo pricing is down 30%, ask them for the data. There's an analyst out there that's been plucking out 5 or 6 transactions, subtracting the brokerage costs that it would take to sell the unit and saying, well, the condo market is upside down. I want you to remind everybody that you talk to, you're not upside down unless your mortgage is greater than the value of your unit. The fact that you buy a unit and may sell it for 4% less than you bought it for is not upside, that does not put you upside down. Okay? Upside down is when your mortgage, which is usually at 50 or 60 or 65% of your value, is more than the current value of your home. So be really careful with people warning. Everybody wants the headline. Everybody wants to get out there and say, hey, the condo market is terrible. I don't really think the condo market is that terrible. In fact, I'm going to tell you some of the reasons that it's actually pretty good. And I hope that the panel that comes up here will, the more esteemed panel, the folks that are in the trenches every day selling new construction condos and working in the condo market, will augment my comments in this regard. But I will say that clearly pricing is down, inventory is up, but we're not suffering 30, 40% declines. Miami-Dade condo waterfront. Miami-Dade non-waterfront gained 6.62% in average pricing. Now, again, relatively large jump in inventory, certainly a decline in the number of sales, but if the number of sales goes down and price goes up by 6.62%, that's not a bad thing. We've had a period of 12 to 18 months where we were selling a lot more product at a pace that we just could not possibly sustain forever. So the fact that we're returning to sort of a more historically normal pace of sales is okay, as long as we're not seeing the pricing cratering. Broward County condo waterfront, down 3.86%. Again, Broward County waterfront condo product, the inventory is up there, and of course, the desirability when you have a robust single-family market it's a different segment. Broward County condo non-waterfront up 6.5%. Number of transactions is up or a little bit level or a little up, and the inventory is actually down. So if you own a condo in Broward, you should feel pretty good about that. Now, let me review for you, because I know I just threw 6 slides you couldn't read. I kind of went through them step by step. So you say, how was 2016? Was 2016 really that bad? Miami-Dade County single-family waterfront -9, non-waterfront +9. Broward waterfront +4.46, non-waterfront +7.75 in Broward. The waterfront condos down 4%, non-waterfront condos up 6%, waterfront condos in Broward down 3.8%, non-waterfront condos up 6.5%. That looks pretty good to me. You know what the commonality is? The waterfront. The stuff on the waterfront is going through a price correction. It's going through a price adjustment right now. Okay. It's not the end of the world. It's probably good. And now we have the buyers going to sit here in 2017, some of whom have delayed their retirement. They're coming from the Northeast. They're coming from the Midwest. They've delayed their retirement in 2008. 9, 10, 11, and they're saying, when am I going to get to Florida? When am I going to get out of this miserable weather? Pricing's down on the waterfront a little bit. There's plenty of inventory to look at. I think 2017 bodes well in that regard. I talked about last year the 2016 market psychology. This really is now the 2017 market psychology. Last year, the sellers just still thought, this is a great time to sell, pricing is up, it's going to be fantastic. The sellers are now getting more serious. And I said to everybody last year, I said, pricing is going to be harder to find. Tell your sellers to get reasonable. Ron Sheffield's been out there telling everybody to get reasonable. Big name, everybody's been saying it. You know what? The sellers realize it now. The sellers are getting more serious. They're getting more serious in terms of when they're taking price reductions, how quickly to find the market. And it's been very positive. And it's why I believe the second, third, and fourth quarter were very strong. It's why we recovered from that first quarter malaise. Last year, buyer concerns, I had a list of buyer concerns. It was 7 or 8 concerns long. And it included the stock market and business conditions and the presidential election. Those concerns now have evaporated to a certain extent. The presidential election is over. You can still be worried about it, but there's a writer, Mitch Albom, that wrote a really great article about presidential elections. He said, whenever we bring in a new president, everybody always worries. It's a worrisome time. We're bringing in a new person. We don't know what their characteristics. We don't know who they're going to surround themselves with. He says, but if you look at it, he says, we always have a reason. We always pick some very targeted reason why we worry about the president. With John F. Kennedy, we worried he was going to turn the whole world Catholic. And with Obama, we worried that he was going to turn the whole world upside down. We'd never had a black president before. And if you go through the history, with George Bush II, we worried that he was just a crazy cowboy and he wasn't smart enough to run the country. And every time that we elect a president, we make up these reasons why we're worried that this guy's not going to do a good job. But those worries are now behind us. It is what it is. Business conditions have been strong. The stock market posted a really good 2016. Overall business sentiment is up. And so all of this concern that the economy is going to get soft has sort of dissipated, right? What are their current concerns? Well, the market reports on Miami and the housing market generally continue to be somewhat unfavorable. Unrightfully so, I would suggest. There are still true global economic conditions and fear of what happens with global economic conditions. And I think there is certainly a persistent, in Miami in particular, a persistent concern that immigration and internationalism is not the hallmark of this new president coming in, and that we need to make sure that we reach out to our international neighbors and act accordingly to continue to be welcoming. But interest rate is the new driver. The buyers' new concerns are going to be interest rates. And I will say this, that's a positive more than a negative, in my view. Let's talk about why the condo market continues to matter. That's the headline grabber. The condo market is the headline grabber. These charts are from my firm's third quarter report to the Miami Downtown Development Authority. And what you'll see is we delivered a lot of new condo product. And when I say delivered, it closed, it got TCO'd, and closings commenced on the projects that had been pre-sold. And so what we've done now is we've finished some of these projects that are in the pipeline. And so what you'll see is that the pipeline of under construction product through the third quarter of 16 is actually down. There's less product under construction. And a lot of that product is closing out. There's not a lot of new product that's in the process of taking contracts, and there's even less that's in the process of sort of testing the market with reservations. So my prediction for 2017 is we're really not going to see a lot of new product come to market. It's very, and I'm going to tell you why. But the good news is that the downtown Miami condo market is tapping the brakes, has been tapping the brakes, and therefore, as a result of that, that market is stabilizing. When you look at what's been completed per year, this chart is in our third quarter report. We're going to be doing some revisions because we actually miscounted some early 2016 TCOs that happened in 15. But the reality of it is we delivered the most amount of product in 2016 that's going to be delivered in this cycle. And I say this cycle, meaning all of the product that's currently under construction before that finishes. This was our big year. 2016 was our big year. 2017, we're going to deliver less product. 2018, we're delivering even less. And by 2019, there will only be about 1,900 units to deliver. What that's doing now is the developers are saying, well, I want to hit the market in 2020. They're already starting to plan, well, how do I plan my project and put it in the right positioning to be able to hit the market by 2019, 2020, 2021. So the development community has already recognized where the next cycle starts. And that next cycle start is going to be in 19, 20, 21. Everybody always asks me about cycles, and I always tell them, look, a cycle doesn't have to start at the bottom and end at the bottom. The cycle is where the bulk of the construction is at its peak and where the construction tails off and then restarts again to go up. That's the cycle. It's not the bottom of the market in pricing to the bottom of the market in pricing. A cycle doesn't have to start here and end here. A cycle can start here, go here, and end here, and come back up again. So it really is up to the discipline of our community to understand kind of where we are. And here's where I say we are in the cycle. We had big deliveries of the condo product in 16. The product that's under construction now is all very, very well positioned, I believe, for the most part. Our big challenge in 2017 is the rental pipeline. There are a tremendous amount of rental projects under construction in downtown Miami now, and the big delivery on rental projects happens this year. And what's going to happen when that occurs and we deliver all the new conventional rental product, it's going to be like musical chairs with all the renters. The renters are going to leave condo projects that are more expensive to go to conventional products. The owners of condo product are going to get nervous because they're losing their tenants, so they're going to lower the rents. The conventional product is new and it's Class A and it was expensive to build and it's built with institutional money that was expecting to get rent here. That rent is going to get re-benchmarked. That sounds terrible, but it's not, because what it does is it makes our downtown more affordable. And to the extent that we can grow our population downtown, it reinforces the lifestyle that you saw in that video. And if you really paid attention to that video, top 20 reasons to move to Miami, what you saw was a lot of shots of Miami Beach. And what I would say is if you make that video again another year or two from now, you're going to see a lot more shots in downtown Miami. I talked about Black Swan event. Zika was a bummer, wasn't it? Big bummer. Didn't have as big of an impact as everybody thought it was going to have, but it certainly wasn't helpful. It wasn't helpful for tourism. It wasn't helpful for decision making in the first to latter part of the year. It just wasn't helpful psychologically. But as it related to the downtown market, it really hurt the folks in Wynwood. Wynwood was on a roll to probably start some new boutique projects, mixed-use projects, by the middle of last year. And I think we're going to start to see some of those announcements happen, over the next 6 to 9 months. You're going to see some smaller mixed-use projects in Wynwood, which will compete downtown, but I think are well differentiated. But what you want to talk about this year, going into this year, is what's happening in the conventional apartment market. That's what's going to matter downtown, and I don't think that it's going to have negative impact. I think the majority of that impact will be positive. I think I mentioned to some of you that heard me speak last year, I got into a little tiff with the Wall Street Journal because they interviewed me and then they put a headline up that the bust in Miami was looming, and I reinforced the message that there was no bust. I don't think the market busted. I think we spent the year. It was choppy like we predicted. It was hard, but there was no bust looming and it didn't happen. What's going to happen this year is that the lack of financing is going to constrain any new groundbreakings. It's going to be very difficult to bring a condo product out of the ground. So unless you're super well capitalized or you have private money, you're not getting out of the ground, which means that no new construction in 2017 puts everybody that's under construction in a much better position. Like I said, I think you'll see some small mixed-use projects, but there's no large-scale development going to occur in 2017. I will say that the condo brokers are maybe frankly or fairly panicking, right? They're the ones that, the folks that deal in condos have had sort of the hardest story to tell. And I certainly get that. There's no question, and I don't think any of the brokers will tell you different, that 2016 wasn't 2014. Some of them have a different take on why, some of them understand, but fundamentally, we're also scaring the market unrightfully because as an association, we have to look at the broader market and say, look, single family is up. Condos, non-waterfront are up. Look at the counties and their relationship. Pricing is up, velocity is up in most of these segments. The fact that our waterfront segment is down and that our waterfront condo segment is down is not the worst thing in the world. The market is otherwise fundamentally solid. That's what I'm here to tell you today. And that's good for the real estate market, because real estate is nearly just a residual product of whatever's happening in the economy. So where are we heading? Last year I made some predictions about the counties. Now it's going to be hard because Broward County is now starting to price itself in, and the pricing in Miami-Dade's coming down a little, and the pricing in Broward is coming up a little. It has not nearly converged. It's still about $100 a square foot apart. But here's my prediction. The product in the sub $300 a square foot range remains competitive. If you're over $450 a square foot, which is mostly the waterfront product, you're going to continue to struggle to find buyers because there is more inventory. I say the middle rich are temporarily gone from the market. That $1 to $5 million product is going to continue in 2017 to be challenging, but the ultra luxury remains in demand, and I think more so now that the presidential election is over. The ultra high net worth individuals absolutely were on pause. If you talk to your wealth management advisor or any wealth management advisor you will find out that the folks that have a lot of money that have to invest it somewhere had pulled back on their real estate allocations. And they pulled back on their allocations because they felt like pricing was too high, that to buy now wasn't the right time, and in fact, to sell now was the right time. I think that's going to start to shift in 2017. The global economy got one leg back. Colombia is doing better. That's the good news. The bad news is Venezuela and Brazil and Argentina still have a long way to go. But we said that this was not going to be a 2-year economic recovery globally. It was a long shot that it's probably 3 to 5 years, which again reinforces that marker of 2020. Absent any black swan event, I think 2017 is going to be stronger. I think we're going to have a better 17 than we did 16. So if you were happy with 16, you're going to be much happier with 17. If you weren't happy with 16, hopefully 17 will make you feel better. Things as an association, we have to be vigilant. There is a lot of talk about eliminating interest tax deduction on single-family homes at the upper levels. We have to continue to deliver the message that this would be extremely detrimental to pricing. This could have, as a single measure, this could have a 25 to 40% impact on housing prices because of the shock of taking away that interest deduction. Capital gains changes. Again, wealth management, thinking about what people do with their money, capital gains treatment and how capital gains gets treated, not only on the sale of your home, but generally in business, is a very, very big driver to buyer psychology. We need to watch for changes in buying patterns and, of course, keep our eye on interest rates. I closed with this last year, and I wanted to do it again this year because it really reinforced what I think are important talking points for you as professional real estate people to understand. And that is that the real estate economy exists within the context of the people that live in South Florida. And South Florida is a vibrant, dynamic, growing place that has a tremendous long game. We've got a fantastic, in my view, 2 decades ahead of us. And what's occurring right now, and the demographic changes that are occurring right now in South Florida are really positive. And so I said last year, and I talked about employment last year, and it's an important component. Our labor force employment basically remains unchanged between 14 and 15. Our civilian labor force, but our unemployment rate is still strong. What's very interesting to me in this census survey between 14 and 15 is the decline in armed forces employment. As we've started to sort of undeploy our forces from around the world, take them back and bring them back to the United States, armed forces, people are coming out of the armed forces and they're getting back into the workforce. And that's going to provide some good benefits to us. But overall, our employment has been steady. And we've been growing here in Miami-Dade County. When you look at the household characteristics and you look at the growth in the number of people that make over $100,000 a year, look at the $200,000 a year more, between 14 and 15, that cohort grew 9.2%, over 5,000 households that make over $200,000 a year. That's a very, very positive effect when you see that type of growth in the upper income cohorts. From the perspective of educational attainment, we continue to attract, we have a fantastic educational infrastructure here between our county college universities, our private universities, our state universities. Our infrastructure here to educate is terrific. What we have to work on is retention, and what we're getting better at now is the retention of, we don't get that brain drain where everybody comes here, gets trained, and goes back home. They're coming, they're getting trained, they're getting educated, and they're saying, wow, this is a great place to live, I want to stay here. And that's very positive for the region. So, you look around the United States, there were 4 states in 2016 that registered positive job growth. 4. Washington State, Oregon, Colorado, and Florida. Plus 3% job growth overall. Now, I made the comment at a meeting the other day, I don't know if I could say it, but it's interesting to me, of course, that all 4 of these states have been liberalizing their marijuana laws. But all kidding aside, that component of job growth in Colorado is having an impact. That reinvestment of tax growth is having an impact. But in Florida, that job growth is very, very important because everybody always looked at Florida as the vacation economy. We were the tourist economy. But you look around now up the east coast of Florida and you look at what we are producing and you look at South Florida and what our strengths are in South Florida, we've got some really good fundamental drivers here. Number one being healthcare and the potential for international healthcare provisions. So I would suggest to you that our positive job growth gains are very good indicators that South Florida is going to do well this year. We've got 5% growth in households over 75,000. We have high value add segments to bring high paying jobs in, healthcare, education, finance, insurance, real estate, logistics, international trade, and aeronautics. These are all key industries now that we have good core competency in that are attracting good high paying jobs. We have a 3.2% growth rate in graduate educated population. So our education strategy is paying off. Where we now need to focus is our middle school and high school education. How do we get people here earlier to be productive? How do we provide a stronger environment for the people that live here to not have to send their kids to private school to get the best education possible? How do we improve our school systems at the middle school, grade school, middle school, and high school level? And the other thing is we have very nominal new housing creation. You may start to see projects envisioned in Homestead and in outlying areas because there's so little place to do new housing creation that a lot of what we're doing now is ripping down and rebuilding. Well, when you do that type of replacement, that's not net new growth. That doesn't require. So when new people are coming to town and you're not building new homes, that's going to have a stabilizing effect on pricing. So I say that we're at certainly in Miami-Dade, we're at static growth. Broward has a little more room to run in the new product category. So here's my final thoughts. I don't see any distress in the market. I think the economy is good. I'm not hearing reports of a wave of foreclosures or missed payments. You don't see default rates increasing nationally or locally. So there's really no distress in the market. So there really shouldn't be any need for panic. The market fundamentals of the economy are good, and our fundamentals here in South Florida are great. We have ongoing multifamily construction that continues. So one of the things that you should always worry about is, well, what happens if the construction industry grinds to a halt? That's like 10% of our economy. So isn't that going to have a net effect on our economy if we stop building condos? And I would say, yes, it normally would. But we've stopped building condos in favor of building apartments. And where we're not building apartments, we're building an all-aboard train. And where we're not building an all-aboard train, we're building major infrastructure at the hospital. So our construction industry has now other channels other than just the condominium market. New single-family starts are feasible at the current pricing, just have to identify the land. I talked before about major planning and federal infrastructure dollars. I think we need to continue and leverage those ties to Tallahassee to make sure that South Florida receives what it needs to grow into the future. But I think that our all-aboard and port projects are going to continue to inject strong secondary construction demand, which will continue to boost our construction industry, which will be positive overall for the economy and positive overall for the region. So my prediction is 2017 is better than 2016. It's your job to make it happen. Thank you.